Mandukya Karika, Pranam Mantra. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Srinuyama Deva Bhadram Pashe Makshabhirya Jatra Sthirairangaye Stustuvagam Sastanubhihi Vyashema Deva Hitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddharshava Swasti na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti Nastakshyo Aristanemi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. We are continuing with the logical aspect of Advaita, and while discussing the logical aspect, Gaudapada and then Acharya Shankar takes the help of scriptures, like takes out the different statements from scriptures, and both of them show how the dualistic approach to reality is not at all correct, it's not feasible, simply not acceptable. Now, before I start, some of my friends who listen to this Mandukya Karika talk, they keep telling that, well, this is difficult, this is difficult. Well, probably it's difficult. So that reminded me of a beautiful joke. There was once a very successful manager, and he was leaving the company, and he was requested by the company to hand over the charge to the most competent person. So it was announced, and next day he gave some seats, one seat each, to some managers, potential managers, 25 of them, and said, go. After 30 days, bring the plant, the seed that I have given. He said, seed of such and such. So after 30 days, everyone came with a beautiful plant. And there was one gentleman, he said that he kept on watering the plant, the seed, but nothing came off. There was no shoot. Then the person who was apparently unsuccessful, he was declared to be the manager. The outgoing manager said, I had given you all fried seeds. They were not supposed to sprout. So what these people had done, when they had watered and found that the seed is not sprouting, they went to the market, purchased seeds, made them sprout, and came. But there was one sincere gentleman who was honest. He kept trying. He was not successful. He admitted. Then it was revealed that he's the only person who was honest and sincere. See, I had read another story about one doctor teaching his undergraduate students how to listen to the heartbeat. So he passed on the stethoscope to all of them and said, can you hear this little dub dub? And they all agreed, yes, there was. Then he took the stethoscope, opened the earpiece, and brought out pieces of cotton. He had stuffed cotton and said that, see, in your desire to make me happy, in your desire to feel successful, you are accepting a lie. Don't accept a lie. You don't understand, nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly all right if you don't understand, because it's a complicated subject. See, you can learn a subject. Learning a subject is not difficult. But learning a language is very difficult. Languages should not be treated as subject. Language is not a subject. In language, the very alphabet, the words, they're entirely different. Now, Mandukya Karika is not an ordinary scripture. It's warp and woof, alphabets, words, terminology. Everything is different. So don't go by the popular perception that people are listening to Mandukya Karika and understanding. No, it's not easy. Now, before we continue with our discussion, let me just tell you in brief what exactly all these arguments are about. The first one is that, see, if you go by our Upanishads, now since we are discussing Upanishads, we are confining ourselves only to the Upanishads. If you go by the Upanishads, they are repeatedly telling Atman alone exists. Number one. Number two, Atman is infinite or immortal. It's simple, absolutely simple. There's nothing complicated about it. Atman alone exists. Atman is immortal, infinite. The moment you say it's infinite, it has many corollaries, and all those corollaries are the nature of Atman. If it is infinite, it will be immortal. It cannot undergo any decay. It cannot have any birth. It cannot have any death, etc., etc. That which that what we have been discussing throughout. Actually, it's simple. Now, yet some of these people, some of these religious systems and philosophy, they will say that Atman is born, soul is born. Something which is infinite, something which is immortal, how can it be born? Because if a thing is born, it will have to die. It's a very simple argument. Secondly, second very important argument, those of you who are interested in the subject, second very important argument is, many a time the scriptures have said that there is no multiplicity. We mentioned it earlier, we will mention it again. Neha nanasti kinchana. Many times, mrityosa mrityum apnoti. One who sees multiplicity goes from death to death. The moment you combine these two statements, conclusion is obvious. Creation cannot be real. By real, we mean that which has the existence of its own, that which exists by its own rights. So there can be no cause, there can be no effect. Obviously. Actually, if you listen to Mandukya Karika talk, you'll fall in love with scriptural philosophy. Amazing. So, well, we will begin with verse number 24. But before we go to verse number 24, today I thought that I'll give you a little taste of Western philosophy and in the form of thoughts of Spinoza. Those of you who have some brush with philosophy might have heard the name of Spinoza. He is he's considered to be a great rationalist, but rationalist in the matters of religion. And as far as ethics is concerned, in fact, his most famous work is known as Ethics. And it is difficult to understand ethics, but say some teachers of philosophy say that first you read ethics, you will not be able to understand. Then you read particular commentary on ethics. Then go back to reading ethics. It says you will fall in love with philosophy forever. Spinoza, he was a refugee. He was a Jew. And he started coming up with astounding questions and wonderful interpretations. The Jews tried to suppress his voice. They tried to bribe him, they cursed him, and finally excommunicated him. Those of you who might have read my book Carving a Sky, there I have described the scene of Spinoza's excommunication. You will find it in any philosophy book, even in the book by Will Durant. In fact, I took it from Will Durant. Spinoza is amazing. And he comes up with such a rational explanation to scriptural statements. And he builds the argument so beautifully that in today's rush, when people are rushing for money and people are rushing for God knows what, I really feel sorry for these people that see, look, you have never tasted the joys of knowledge. In Bengal, Ravindra Sangeet is so popular. And the beauty of Ravindra Sangeet is that even an ordinary laborer can hum a line or two from Ravindra Sangeet. And the most cultured ones also do it. Love for culture. So when you find these people running for money with no love for culture, either spiritual or philosophical or culture, you feel sorry for them. All the advantages that our ancestors had given us through thousands of years of evolution and hard labor, we are losing. So now, Spinoza, the arguments that Spinoza uses about this concept of infinity is beautiful. I'd like to present it, and you will love it. Those of you who have been listening to this talks on Mandukya Karika, you will love it. Spinoza comes up with a very simple premise. God is infinite. Something that Upanishads have continuously been talking about. In fact, every religion talks about God being infinite. Just that in the Upanishads, they say Atman or Brahman. Now, Spinoza uses the word God, so I am using the word God. God is infinite. Infinite means infinite to Spinoza, and infinite means is infinite to me also. Whenever I deliver talks, whenever I write, I insist on this point that infinite is infinite. What's the implication? God has to have infinite attributes. Surprisingly, persons like Ramanuja, who belongs to Vishishta Advaita, he also says the same thing. Anant Gunanidhan, Ananta Gunanidhan, repository of infinite qualities. So he says, God has infinite number of attributes. And one of those attributes, just one of those attributes is thoughts. As mind. An extension of it is matter. Now, there are some Western philosophers now. I don't have much respect for Western philosophy. And Descartes, who is considered to be a great mind, well, what can I say? I myself not a philosopher, not even a teacher of philosophy. Worse, I have not even been a student of philosophy. I have no right to talk. Problem is when you keep the Bible and you try to bring out the meaning, everything goes to Bible, then one has to become suspicious about it. If you are talking about free thinking, go by free thinking. You need to get the ideas corroborated, but even in case of Descartes, somewhere he got stuck up. Spinoza, who was not a man of religion, he went by free thinking and explained the Bible. That's the beauty. So he says thoughts. Now Descartes, for Descartes, thoughts and matter, they belong to Cartesian divide, x-axis, y-axis, not to Spinoza. Surprisingly, not to Vedanta also. And that's why this pen as an idea, this pen as a word, and this pen as an object, these three are one and the same to the mind. Those of you who have listened to our explanations on Om, why Om is God? Om is the name of God. Om is the sound equivalent of God. Why? Because of this reason. To the mind, all three are same, whether it is idea or word or object. They are all same. That's why in dream, the mind creates all this. God being infinite, thoughts and matter, they cannot be separate from Him. It's just an attribute of God. This particular argument is going to play a very important role. Now, we are not trying to explain Advaita Vedanta from the standpoint of Spinoza. I'm just giving you a test. Now, how some great mind from the West nearly reached that level, not fully. That's not possible for them. Advaita is beyond them. It's just not possible. So, what Spinoza says that thoughts and their extension, which is matter, they are adjectival, like adjective. It's qualification, adjectival, adjectival. That is, they are not things by themselves. When you say a red horse, red is an adjective. The thing in itself is the horse. Red is just an adjective, it's a quality. So thoughts and matter, an extension of thought, they all belong to, they are just as attributes of God. Spinoza is saying, not Advaita. In Advaita, of course, we come across the same thing. Thus, there can be no personal immortality. Since we are not discussing Spinoza, we are just taking the salient points from Spinoza. There cannot be personal immortality. So Mukti by Dvait and Vishishta Dvait is negated by Spinoza, although he did not know of these systems of thought. Infinite being infinite, either you say it's infinite or you say it's not mortal, not immortal. Immortality and infinite, they are one and the same. Now, the moment you come to mind, thought, or anything, that's an attribute of God. It's just an attribute of God. They're like adjectives. They don't have a separate existence. If there is no separate existence, it cannot have a separate immortality. So, going to the heaven, that as the Christians discuss, and they consider that to be immortality, other religions too, it's illogical. Absolutely illogical. And Spinoza was hated by the Christians. And yet, they could not contradict him. They cannot contradict him even today. What is Spinoza says? Finite things have boundaries. Whenever, say for example, here is this pen. It has boundary, and this boundary is both physical, logical. So anything that has a boundary, anything, whether it is physical or logical, they are some kind of negation. Some kind of negation. So it is up to this. After this, it is not. Because the moment you determine something, determination is negation. When we say this pen, we are determined this is the pen. So it's not only that this is, we think that we are pointing at this thing, but actually it is negation of thousand things. We don't even understand that. It's negation. In Advaita Vedanta, when we talk of neti neti, it is negation of negation. Every boundary is a negation. And in neti neti, the boundaries are removed. There is a negation of negation. So there is no positive affirmation because it cannot be done. It being infinite, you cannot say that it's a positive something. There cannot be any affirmation. It is negation of negation. And so there can be only one being who is really positive and must be absolutely infinite. That is God. Because everything else is some kind of negation. Positivity is only with God. So, what is immortality? Immortality has to be impersonal. Impersonal, mind it. Immortality has to be impersonal. And it has to be more and more being one with God because God is infinite. Spinoza explains mukti according to the Bible. This should be, this is what immortality means, this is what infinity means. Bring it to Advait. Now, Spinoza didn't know of Advait, and he definitely did not talk about Advait. Now, what happens? Anything that has a boundary is finite. Finite cannot be immortal. Atman has been declared by the Upanishads to be immortal. So Atman cannot have any boundary. This is the argument that we have been running continuously. What is immortality? How can you be immortal? By growing more and more to the extent that finally you become one with Atman. Can you become one with Atman? As Spinoza says, no. This is where Advaita Vedanta differs from every other system of religion. What? It says you are already. When Spinoza says that you become more and more one with God, because God is infinite, that means from finite you become more and more with God. It says remove the limitations. This physical thing, anything in this world, whether it is matter or whatever it is, it has a limitation. In case of thought, there's a logical limit. In case of matter, there's a physical limit. Remove those limitations because those limitations are superimpositions. Remove them, you become what you are, infinite. Liberation means removing all limiting adjuncts. Now, I told you this is what I wanted to discuss from Spinoza's philosophy. I find it very interesting that Spinoza uses very simple argument. God is infinite. Everything about him has to be infinite. How do you explain finite? As an attribute. And what is an attribute? When we see it as a physical thing, it's a limitation. Get rid of those limitations. This is what Spinoza is basically talking about. So from there, we come to our main, what Karika is discussing. Neha nanati chamnaya chamnayad indro mayavi ityapi ajayamana bahudha maya jayate tusaha. This verse translated into English means There are scriptural passages like uh, one does not see multiplicity in Atman, and Indra, through his Maya, becomes many. So one knows that Atman, though even unborn, appears to have become many only through Maya. Karika takes up certain scriptural statements and see how scriptures have talked about multiplicity. And every now and then, Karika also goes logically, directly. Multiplicity is there, no one doubts that. However, the Shruti, scriptures, they say there is no multiplicity whatsoever here. And the multiplicity that you see, this is by the power of Maya, because Indra becomes many. It's in the Ved. So Acharya Shankar comes up with a very beautiful argument, says, if the creation is real, if this pen was indeed created, that is, creation is real, in that case, why would scriptures go negating it? Mind it, the argument that we mentioned in the beginning. Scriptures, by scriptures we mean Veda and the Upanishads. Nowhere they say that Atman doesn't exist. Nowhere. That means if there is something, scriptures should not go contradicting. If the scriptures are saying that it doesn't exist, then there's something wrong with its existence. Also, more importantly, in other religions, you find there's one prophet who has told whatever. Now, if he has been silent on certain topics, well, then the philosophers they come up with the explanations. And in worldly matters, if he has gone wrong somewhere, that mistake will continue to be there, as we see in some religions. Not so in Hinduism. Because Hinduism is not the product of one person, it's not the product of one mind, it's not the product of one sadhana. Many sages have contributed, and they all have the same opinion. They're not talking different things. Like those of you who might have studied Sri Ramakrishna, Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. No. Sri Ramakrishna is also telling the same thing that we are discussing here. And he's talking not from the books, he's talking from his own experience. I tell you, something I really feel sad about. It's unfortunate that the world does not know about this great treasure house. So objection may be raised that Maya is a state of mind. Maya is not a reality. How does it relate to Srishti? How does it relate to creation? Answer is that yes. It's through the power of mind. It's through the power of mind that all the creation comes. And this will now be discussed. And it says, like in Ishopanishad, we have talks on Ishopanishad. You'll find it in the playlist in English and Bengali both. Anyone who has known Atman, one who has known the infinite, one who has known the oneness, he goes beyond sorrow. He goes beyond temptations. He goes beyond fear. All these things, the negative things that we abhor in our real life, person goes beyond all that. But what is the condition? destruction of multiplicity. So go whatever way, multiplicity is not acceptable. Multiplicity is just not acceptable. संभूतेर अपवादाच्च संभव प्रतिषिध्यते कोन्वेनम जनयेदिति कारणम प्रतिषिध्यते. Is verse number 25. This is such a funny thing. In the same Ishopanishad, we come across Sambhutim cha Vinasham cha. So, we'll explain. Says, by the negation of the creation coming into birth is negated. The causality of Brahman is denied by such statement as who can cause it to come into birth. So, the actual mantra in Ishopanishad is Andam Tamah Pravishanti Ya Vidyam Upasate. We have explained it, that place. It says, anyone who worships Hiranyagarbha, Hiranyagarbha is the source from which creation proceeds, enters darkness. Why? Because that is the source of multiplicity. If you want to move in light, you have to go for the infinite. You cannot be in the multiplicity. Says that Sambhuti, creation, cause and effect both, had they been real, the Upanishads would not have condemned it. Not only negation, there's a positive condemnation. If you see multiplicity, now see, there's a particular religion, it talks about infinity, but it talks about multiplicity also. You don't accept infinite, off with your head. That's the problem with Semitic religions. I don't agree with you, off with your head. That means, on the one hand, you are talking about the infinite oneness. On the other hand, you are accepting the multiplicity. How can these two be reconciled? This is what happens when religion and philosophy falls in the hands of the ignorant, the lower kinds of mind. The whole thing gets degenerated. Think of atomic bomb falling in rogue hands. Atomic bomb falling in the hands of a terrorist organization. What will the consequences? Same thing happens with spirituality too, religion too. If religion is managed by rogue elements, the consequences are disastrous. What this mantra number 25 says that if the cause and naturally the effect were real, the Upanishads would not have condemned them. That the Upanishads are condemning them, that shows there is no multiplicity. Here, let's go back and think that every religion considers this world to be not as great, not as real as God. Sometimes it is accepted as a temporary phase, sometimes as this, sometimes as that. No one considers the world to be as real as God. Advaita goes one step further and simply says that world has absolutely no existence apart from Brahman. It doesn't have a reality of its own, nor can you say that it doesn't exist. It very much exists. But exists how? It's pure Brahman, it's pure Atman. So, well, there's a huge discussion here. But these are more of polemics, not needed. The conclusion is that if somebody can get out of avidya, ignorance, and gets established in truth, he gets established in his own real form, Swarup. So who can create him? How can there be a creation? When these scriptures are continuously talking about this, that know your true nature. If you get established in your true nature, then you know that you are infinite. Now, just imagine, just imagine that you believe the words of the scriptures and you go all out to realize this infinite nature of yours. You realize this infinite nature of yours. Infinite has to be immortal. Immortal means you cannot have death. If you cannot have death, definitely you didn't have any birth. So how can anybody have created you? Mind boggling. That's the only word you can use, mind boggling. Just remember this first point that we had mentioned in the beginning. Scriptures are continuously talking about your Atman, and Atman is immortal, finished. Or Atman is infinite, finished. The conclusions that follow are just mind boggling. And to realize that, to know that, to know this truth, you don't have to die. Unlike as in other religions, where they say you die and go to the heaven. So first you have to die and then you have to go to heaven. We had one senior monk here at Belur Math. He used to say jokingly that look, Hindu scriptures say that if you die at Kasi, you will have mukti, liberation. So to get liberation, you have to die. But here at Belur Math, you don't have to die. While living, you can have this mukti. So great monk he was, and but jokingly he used to say this. Now, why should I believe in something which will happen to me, which I will experience after my death? I want to see it now, here. Let me see. It's a different matter that I cannot realize Atman. I don't have that capacity. But there are people who have claimed that yes, they have. And their influence on this world and all that they have done is palpable. Everyone knows it. Then comes verse number 26. Sa esha neti neti iti vyakhyanam niyunate yataha sarvam agrahya bhavine hetunajam prakashate. So on account of the incomprehensible nature of Atman, this is problem. Mind is finite. Atman is infinite. So mind cannot grasp Atman. So what these scriptures say, scriptural passages keep on talking about neti neti, as we mentioned a little while ago, that when they say neti neti, not this, not this, it's a negation of negation. Everything finite is in some form limitation. That is negation of infinity. Now, the scriptural passages they talk about not this, not this. Is this pen God? They'll say, no, 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 not this. Negation of finite. Is this microphone God? No, it's not this. Negation of this. Verse number 26 is a very interesting verse. Atman is incomprehensible. You cannot grasp the nature of Atman by your mind. So, what do these scriptures teach? They say not this, not this. Negation of all dualistic ideas attributed to Atman. Coming back to Spinoza, where Spinoza says attributes, and he also discusses finite. The moment you are putting a limit, it becomes finite. Nothing finite can belong to God, whatever that might be. The finite, whatever finite thought, finite object, whatever it is not God. Well, it can be an attribute of God, at least for our understanding. What Advaita Vedanta says, don't go by attributes, go for the real. If there is anything finite, it's limited. Negate the limitedness, negating the limitedness. Advaita is all about negating limitedness. And that's why they talk about not this, not this. If you go by a scriptural statement, not this, not this, the only conclusion is Atman alone exists. Says. Whatever you come up with, it will say, no, no, not this. Why? The moment you point at something, pointing at something means limiting it. As Spinoza says, limiting it means actually it's a negation, because every determination is a negation. Every determination is negation. What Advaita Vedanta does is it negates any kind of determination. Determination is duality. Birth is duality. So it's a determination. Death is determination, it's a duality. Advaita Vedanta negates. My dear listeners, I'm not sure if I am at all comprehensible, if my words are clear to you. In case you have any difficulty, please ask. Dr. Seema Raj Kondwar, negation only points us that mind itself should be negated. I can assure you, Dr. Seema ji, you must have listened to some of these Advaita talks here and there. Surprisingly, Advaita Vedanta doesn't negate mind. It talks about, well, we shall see. Mind is not actually negated. Actually, nowadays, you see, we have so many popular speakers on Advaita Vedanta. And not only popular, we also have pop speakers. So people get strange ideas. No, it's not that. We are trying to be as precise and as concise as possible without letting go of the major arguments. I think uh, today's talk number 35. 35 talks on this. It has to be pretty elaborate. Anyway, any question if you have, please ask. If not, we'll proceed. Now, since every duality is a determination, and determination is some kind of negation, Advaita Vedanta negates any such negation. So it comes up with beautiful slok. Sato hi maya janma yujyate natu tattvataha sattvato jayate yasya jatam tasya jayate. What is ever existent, that is Atman. appears to pass into birth through Maya. So are we born? Definitely. But this birth is not real. It's what? It's appearance through Maya. Yet from the standpoint of reality, it does not do so. From the standpoint of Atman, it cannot have. From the relative standpoint, yes. But he who thinks this passing into birth is real asserts, as a matter of fact, that what is born passes into birth again. That means, since Atman alone exists, nothing else exists other than Atman. Infinite means infinite. There cannot be any birth. So, see, I find it very surprising for a person like, say, Spinoza, who went to the extent of telling that there is infinity. It comes up with attributes. And as if God the infinite and his attributes are two different things. With all due respect, as I said, I'm not even a student of philosophy. But see, ultimately, every form of knowledge is only a shortcut, it's only a tunnel to knowledge. So there is no branch of knowledge. Actually, branch of knowledge is a wrong term to use. It should be tunnel to knowledge, shortcut to knowledge. We discussed it in the previous class. What is shortcut to knowledge? So ultimately, every knowledge starts from common sense. There's a very famous saying in English, it's no rocket science. But remember, even a rocket science starts from common sense. It begins from common sense, goes goes on becoming complex, and more complex. Same with philosophy, same with physics. Biology is all information. In fact, information is something that completely puts me off. I just can't keep information in my head. I don't even remember quotations. It's very difficult for me. And most times in my student days in biology, I got 0 out of 50 and consequently out of 100. It was all information. I just could not keep anything. So biology never fascinates me because it's all information mostly. Don't get offended, those who have been biology students. Some people are made that way. I am extremely dull at keeping information. I don't even remember the quotations of Swami Vivekananda. I'm very poor at that. But where there is knowledge, when step one leads to step two and step two leads to step three, it's all common sense. So information, knowledge, these are two different things. I always had confusion. Such and such king and his son is so and so, and then his grandson is so and so. I would always confuse between these people. So difficult. I mean, to me. Somewhere Spinoza missed what? The real. The real can never be born, either truly or through Maya. Sorry, it can be born through Maya, but not truly. And even those who believe that there is birth is possible, birth is a reality, they also admit that only that which can be born, which has the property to be born, gets born. But Atman doesn't have the property to be born. Atman is immortal. So somewhere you are contradicting yourself. To be very honest, I tell you, I find dualistic approach extremely confusing. Not bhakti. Bhakti has nothing to do with dualistic approach. And it's the dualists who have forcibly taken bhakti as their philosophy. Advaita doesn't contradict bhakti. As we mentioned in one or two classes back, dualists have problems with themselves and dualists have problem with Advaitins. Like a drunkard, like a madman, standing on the ground challenges an elephant rider. Come, come, I'll fight with you. It's something like that. But again, as I said, I'm not really, forget about being a teacher. I'm not even a student of philosophy. I don't understand these things. And they were great masters and definitely great spiritual persons. I have no right to criticize them, but I find it pretty strange. So logical. I mean, how can you go against logic? As I say, is it scientific? Advaita alone is scientific. Nothing else is scientific. Bottom line is this perception of the universe, that we are able to perceive this universe. See, I'm able to perceive this pen and this microphone. This itself proves existence of Atman, even though its knowledge is subtle. This is a problem. Scriptures are continuously telling that Atman is there, Atman is infinite, etc. And we are able to perceive this world. That we are able to perceive the world, there's a highest form of Atman that we can perceive while being in this body. Partly we have discussed it and we shall continue to discuss. What? Verse number 28 says, Asato maya janma tattvato neva yujyate bandhya putro na tattvena maya vapi jayate. It's a very interesting verse that the unreal cannot be born either really or through maya. If something is unreal, how can it be born? For, he gives the example, son of a barren woman. If a woman is barren, he cannot have a son. If there is a son, the woman is not barren. Son of a barren woman cannot be born either through reality or through maya. This pen, either it is Atman or it is not. If it is not Atman, it is unreal. If it is unreal, it cannot have come into existence either really or through maya. So, what is this Atman? What is this pen? It has to be Atman. Combines verse number 27 and 28. Sato hi maya janma yujyate nato tattvataha. The real alone gets born. Milan Chatterjee, Tanmaya, Tars of Maya, oh my God, please, these things are degrading, debasing. Please do not debase this subject. Tars of Maya jodi thake, why discuss here? These are, don't come up with your wisecracks. भाई खोल करताल नहीं जा रहा हरिनाम करे. These talks are not meant for them. Be happy with it. Nothing wrong with it. Listen to our Narad Bhakti Sutra. Listen to our Bhagavatam talks. Let these talks be for people who want to go higher and they who do not want to come to Sab Tar Tar Sab Maya. The real. The real appears as many through its Maya. The unreal, as Gita says, Na sato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata. The real, it never becomes non-existent. And that which is unreal never comes into existence. Pen as pen, it has no existence. Pen as Atman has a existence forever, ever. So why I am seeing it as pen? The play of Maya. And we will continue with verse number 29, where these things will be explained further. Thank you so much. Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.